All right, everybody, welcome to this new episode of the Krypton Report. And today I am joined by fellow podcaster and friend. You may have heard me recently. I was on her show, Supergirl Radio. Great podcast. Check it out. Fun, even more fun if you watch it live on YouTube. But I'd like to welcome Rebecca to the show. Welcome, Rebecca.
Well, thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure to have you on Supergirl Radio, so I'm glad to speak with you again.
Yeah, it was a blast, and it's fun. Uh, like I said, just like doing the live thing that we're working on doing here now, and I enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed. So, not too long ago, last month in September, you did a panel at DragonCon, and I was telling you off mic, but then I said, hey, we'll kind of save this, where it was like would you say like a battle royale type thing of Superman. You had a panel of super fans and super podcasters, and I was like, if ever there was a panel of podcast people I should be on, this was the one. I loved your dialogue with everybody, and I'm in my car driving, listening to like yelling like yes that no yes no. Like, it was a good time, and
yeah,
ironically, the day I was listening to it, as I was driving store to store trying to find uh my kid's copy. That's right, my kid's copy of Zack Snyder's Justice League. I was like, this is cool. I'm going to find this movie, and I'm listening to this podcast.
yeah, it was a good time. It was a Dragon Con panel, and I've been doing panels at Dragon Con for a little while now, and I saw that was an option. And I didn't really know what it was. It was called Superman Battle Royale of the Supermen or something, and it was basically just putting out categories of things like best suit, it was best suit. I think best Clark, best Superman, favorite Superman, the Superman who most embodies the Boy Scout, those kinds of categories. And so we had to pick which of the Supermen and there were it was mostly live action, but there were animated options as well, like best voice, who had the best Superman voice. So it was really fun because I have different likes about different Supermen. So it you know
Oh yeah, we're
I
gonna get
didn't
into some of it.
yeah, so I didn't have, Henry Cavill's my answer to everything, and I think it was a pretty balanced, panel, and we were all able to agree to disagree, which was great.
I will say that listening to that panel, I did feel somewhat sorry for the forgotten Superman, because I'm 95% sure. I will say I was driving when I was listening to it with headphones, so I could have missed it, but there was no mention of Kirk Allen, like
Yeah,
that I can
well,
recall.
yeah, there was a mention of Kirk Allen just in the idea of so we were trying to eliminate Superman to
Okay,
try to, I
okay,
guess, eventually try to find the best Superman. And there was a part of the panel where somebody, my friend John, actually, who's a podcaster himself, he mentioned like why are we not talking about Kirk Allen? I might have eliminated him first because his argument was Kirk Allen, yes, he was the first live action Superman, but he didn't have anything that we would recognize as Superman today. So it's
yeah,
kind of difficult to eliminate Kirk. Like I guess he's kind of an easy choice to eliminate him, but it's also kind of not fair because he didn't have all of the previous versions of Superman to kind of pull from. So the Kirk Allen of it is it's very complicated, I guess.
yeah. It's interesting about his Superman just because it's like what he did. George Reeves came in and did it better and took it
Yeah.
up because I want to say 2 years ago, a year ago. I can't even keep track of time anymore. I think it might have been last year. We were doing this thing called pilot season where we were kind of just looking at the first pilot of every version of Superman, and we've been doing it for several years now. And we compared, we did the first, I think, one or two episodes of the serials. Then we did the first episode of the George Reeves show, and how the first part of the George Reeves pilot is like the first part of the serial when it comes to mom, pa, and everything, but it's all a little bit better. And I agree with your argument about poor Kirk there. He like I say it not to be like mean, but really like the forgotten Supermen are Kirk Allen, David Wilson, and even if you want to say um, Bob Holliday.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
Bob Holliday, what a wonderful voice. I have some of his, he's the one from the musical, right? The Broadway musical?
he did the stage version. David Wilson did the very hard to get through
The
watching
TV version?
the
Yeah,
of
well,
the altered musical.
I will say Bob Holliday, I have some of the tracks on my phone and I listen to them every now and then, but he has such a wonderful voice and there's one of the songs, I can't remember the title of it, but it's he sings of the kind of the sadness of what it's like to be Superman, how hard and difficult it is. And it's just not something that you would maybe hear. People argue today that there's nothing that should be sad about Superman, or Superman shouldn't have doubts, or he shouldn't have problems. But Bob
Really?
Holliday's Superman, yeah, some people do make that argument. He has to be happy and hopeful all the time. But that song always reminds me that it is hard to be Superman. It would be hard to be Superman. So I had there's a special place for Bob Holliday in my heart.
I mean, of course it's hard to be super. I mean, it's like the responsibility that falls on you. If I mean, to be him, to be a good like the good person, but yeah, the hopeful aspect he projects when he's around everyone, but when he is himself, like he carries the weight. Like,
Oh yeah.
and I think about the lines like Superman Returns is such an interesting film because there's some really good stuff in there, and there's some stuff I just was like, no. But like what Martha says when she's like, um, oh no, it's leaving my brain. Even if you are the last, it doesn't mean you're alone.
Mm.
Right, when he's talking about really feeling like he's alone and stuff. I mean, that would be something that would weigh on you. But all right, so we have some questions here, and these are questions that I like to ask when anybody shows up here on the podcast. So we're gonna start. Some are gonna be quick. Some are gonna be like thought provoking. But here we go.
Okay, sounds good.
And I'll probably think of like 500 more after we're done.
That's all right.
So I'm a number here. How did your fandom start? Like with the whole Supergirl, Superman, like the whole Kryptonian zeitgeist. Was it Superman first, then Supergirl, or would you exposed to Supergirl first? Then where did
Oh,
it all start for you?
that's a hard question, because I guess a lot of us in I guess born in the 70s and 80s, I guess Superman has always just been kind of there. But I think probably Superman first. I probably had seen Christopher Reeve first. But I did watch the Helen Slater movie as a kid, the Supergirl movie as a kid, and I loved it. People trash it today, but when I was growing up, I loved it. I loved Selena as a villain. I thought Helen Slater was a good Supergirl. I thought kind of the magical, mystical aspect of it, even though I didn't totally understand it, I enjoyed it. And so I grew up loving that movie, even, and it wasn't until I got older that I realized everyone hated it because I thought it was a lot of fun. So I guess for the super side of things, probably Christopher Reeve would have been my first touchstone. But it wasn't until because I used to, and I don't know if this is like a dirty little secret in super fandom, but I used to be, and I say used to be because I think it's changed for me, but I used to be more of a Batman girl. So I grew up like Batman 89 was like my jam. I love Tim Burton movies. And so Batman has always been a kind of a thing that has, a character who's gone with me my whole life. But I think it's changed a little bit. I think I now prefer the super stuff more than the Batman stuff. But I guess that kind of changes a little bit. But I think for me, when I really got into Superman, it would have been, I don't know, 2005 or so, because a friend of mine had recommended Smallville to me because she knew I loved villains,
That's a
and
good
she was
friend.
like, and she was like, the Lex Luthor on the show is really good. You should check it out. And so I got into Smallville. I kind of grew out of love with Smallville, but I still see Smallville as like my introduction to more to Superman in a real sense. Like I knew who Superman was, I knew who Lois Lane was, I knew what that world was, but Smallville actually got me wanting to read comics because I
Hmm,
wanted to know more about the characters. And so at that point in my life, I was interested in reading the comics based on my interest in the show. And so a friend of mine, Mike, he was like, I have a ton of comics. I can just, bring over some comics for you to read and you can borrow them. So he dumped all this stuff on me, like a bunch of Teen Titans and the death of Superman. And so that was when I kind of started really getting into comics pretty hardcore and really finding that I really loved the Superman mythology. And so that's kind of just trickled down since. But I think there's, a couple of touchstones for me with Superman and Supergirl. And it's probably, the Christopher Reeve, Helen Slater, Donnerverse kind of era. And then probably Smallville and its introduction to me reading comics.
I'm going to say a couple of things. One,
Okay.
you just said Donnerverse. Superman did the connective universe first because
It
the
did.
Supergirl
I argue
movie
that all the
connects
time.
connects to the Superman films. Point of order there. Number two,
Yes, I agree.
you noticed your friend brought you comics. Physical media, people, they still have
Yes.
value. You can't just let people borrow your password on your digital stuff. You can't just say, hey, here, borrow my iPad. I downloaded some stuff. No, but you can hand
The
somebody a book or a DVD or a Blu ray and say, hey, check this out.
the best part of him giving me all those old comics, was that it still, it had that old comic smell. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
can smell, like, the printed page coming off those comics, and
What
I always sometimes now I prefer opening up an old comic just 'cause, there's that
I,
musky kind of comic smell to it.
I miss old comics because I miss when I would open them and like there'd be advertisements for like some food item that no longer exists or like Game Genie or this arcade game and it really like sets you in the time of when it was released.
Oh,
Now you
yeah.
open a comic and it's just advertising other comics and
Yeah.
there's no more like outer um, advertising in comic books anymore. You know,
Yeah,
you
I
open a
love the
DC
old
comic.
Yeah,
Go.
a lot of those old comics, I notice have like advertisements for workout equipment and, trying to build your weight. And I guess I don't know if they did that a lot in the Superman stuff, especially, but I always wonder, like, what kid is reading this and like sent in stuff to get that equipment, and did he beef up? Did that kid beef up because of this? So I always enjoy looking at that because it makes me, wonder who's sent in those things.
It makes me wonder too, because I know that was like Joe Schuster's thing. It was like always wanted to work out, and he was always into like the bodybuilding and stuff.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
lot of bodybuilding advertisements in those
you
those
know,
old comics.
it's so interesting because I feel like you start out like as a Superman fan, like for us, and then like Batman's like your teenage rebellion years, like oh Batman, you know. And then like for me, I think I started getting more in like my Superman fandom took more of a stronger presence more than anything because I realized that I wanted to read the stories of the and reflect the character that I felt the real world needed most.
Mm,
You know, like I enjoy Batman. I enjoy Batman stories and Batman movies. I like the detective angle, and it's a great character, but I don't identify with the character. And I mean, it's I'm not saying I'm Superman or anything, but like there's a lot of qualities in that character that I identify with and I love, and but I also love the hope and the aspirational. I wrote a piece that appeared in the Daily Planet online about why I always wear a Superman shirt, and it was about just the idea of that symbol having this true beautiful meaning that still reflects, hope, aspiration, a sense of caring for all. Like, even right now, like it's hard to see, but like I have my shirt is the BVS Batman
nice.
with the Superman in it. My wife got me uh back as like it was a special preview thing before the movie came out. It's like it came out like the shirt came out like as a limited edition in 2015. Um, but so I always have one on. I mean, even have like I have my Superman tattoo always too. But like,
Right.
so it's just how I've kind of gotten to where I'm like I like the character more. But enough about me. I talk about myself all the time. Let's talk about you.
No, that's our no, I agree. I do that sometimes if I feel like I need a little extra courage, and I need to go somewhere and do something. Or I remember my first day back, I had surgery for my cancer that I went through back in, I guess it would have been 2015, and so I had done surgery recovery for 4 weeks, and my first day back at work, I wore a Superman shirt just so I could, have a little extra courage as I went back to work and kind of tried to get back into my, normal routine. So I understand that. I sometimes there's something about it when you wear it that, you know, helps give you a little something.
It does. It's kind of like that reference in Fred Claus where Kevin Spacey's character wears the Superman cape at the end under his suit because it helps make him feel strong, and Santa like pats him on the back and everything.
Yeah.
Um, when I need that boost, sometimes what I do is like I just hear like some of those like Jonathan Kent speeches in my head, like he's talking to me. That's I'm like, yes. What am I gonna do? What kind of man am I gonna be?
Well,
um,
Jonathan Kent is very wise, so that's a good person to
I'm
listen
just
to.
like, thanks, voice in my head, Jonathan Kent. And if you haven't listened to it, my friend Zach does the Always Hold On to Smallville podcast
Awesome.
where they do like retro. I've been on there like every season since it started. It's a great little like dive into how that show is carried over. You're talking about like, because I feel like for me, and I've said this before, like Smallville was important to me because that show started when I was in high school. And then it carried me through high school, college, after, and then it ended the year I got married. Like I got married the same month that the show ended, and they had the wedding attempt of Clark and Lois on the show and everything.
Yeah, they
So
they
like,
didn't actually get married, but they had a ceremony, I think, but it didn't
and
go
then they
through.
tried to get married again at the end. Where it was a time jump, and and then now here, Superman Lois is going on, and here I am now, married for 10 years, have children. I'm a dad. So now once again, like Superman is more relevant in
Oh,
just
yeah.
like who I am connecting with that. So all right. So back to you. Favorite version of Superman, period. So it can be a comic, live action, animated. Favorite version, go.
I mean, my favorite Superman is Henry Cavill. I grew up with the Christopher Reeve version, but I never really liked him totally. Like he seemed friendly, but I was always bothered by the mind wipes. Growing up, I always thought Margot Kidder's Superman was a little, everybody talks about, oh, she can't see, that he's Superman because of the glasses, and it did bother me when I was a kid growing up because I did have glasses, and I always thought, why would people not recognize me if I took my glasses off? And so that kind of bothered me, and I didn't like the way Christopher Reeve's Superman would uh, take memories away from Lois, and he does it twice. I think people forget about it. Oh, I don't know where Tyler went. Did Tyler go
Uh,
away? Have you seen Tyler?
no, no. I'll go see if he's outside.
Play, yeah, yeah. See if you can go get
Hey,
Tyler
what's
so
up?
I can finish.
Hey, what's up?
Oh,
I'm
oh,
back. Yeah,
there's Tyler. Okay, good, good. Tyler's
yeah.
back. Okay, good. But yeah, so I think people forget that Christopher Reeve's Superman actually mind wipes Lois twice. He does it in Superman 2 and then he does it in Superman 4. And the one in Superman 4 is even worse cuz he does it just to make himself feel better. And so that was what I kind of grew up with in Superman, and I didn't like, and I think for a long time I didn't like Superman because I didn't like that he lied and that he took away our memories and all that kind of stuff. And so then when Henry Cavill's Superman came around, I had I had previously, when I had gotten into comics, I was reading like the Bronze Age, John Byrne, Man of Steel, Death of Superman. Like I was reading that Superman. And so when I got to Henry Cavill, I saw that Superman, that Bronze Age Death of Superman guy, that John Byrne Man of Steel. I saw that in Henry Cavill's Superman, and he kind of corrected his version of Superman, corrected everything I didn't like about Christopher Reeve. He never lied to Lois even when she discovered who he was. He was like, I guess I'm just gonna have to hope you don't do anything crazy with my secret. And so he really trusted Lois, and she was much smarter. Amy Adams's Lois was much smarter. So I like that world that Henry Cavill's Superman lives in because I think there's something that's relatable for me. You're talking about things being relatable to you. I think that version of Superman is kind of relatable to me because not everything is easy. And, you have to figure things out. And I like the world in it because it is reflective of our world. And that Superman would have to deal with harder things. And so I don't know. I think Henry Cavill's Superman just kind of hit at the right time for me because, like I mentioned, I had gone through breast cancer, and that happened like right after Man of Steel came out. I think Man of Steel came out in what, June
13.
2013. I was
Yeah.
diagnosed with breast cancer like at the very end of 2013, and I went through cancer treatment in 2014. So I really held on to Zack Snyder's Man of Steel and Henry Cavill's Superman. I listened to the soundtrack when I would go work out at the Y to keep myself strong. I would watch it at night when I went to bed, so I'd have something good to fall asleep to. So it just holds a really special place in my heart. And he just that version of Superman just made me love Superman. Like I liked Superman, but Henry Cavill's Superman made me love him. So I think I would have to say that.
I will I'll share this. I don't know if I've shared this before. I don't know. I talk a lot. So um when my wife and I had our second miscarriage, the birth date that they projected was going to be on the release of Man of Steel.
Oh
And
wow.
I made a deal with my wife. I was like, okay, if the kid comes the day the movie comes out, you have to let me name it Clark. Uh, and stuff. And so that kind of carried like when we saw the movie, the opening scene. And I think, this is just a quick critique I've said before is I like the fact that Clark is born on Krypton and he's an infant and like they shortly have to send him away because I think it resonates as a parent a lot stronger than like, the John Byrne sending the Matrix and he's born on Earth. Because that idea, like, so when my son Solomon was born, shortly to like the next day after he was born, they had him in the NICU for a while. But the first night, I had him laying on my chest and he was just sleeping there. My wife was asleep. I was awake. And I watched Man of Steel on my iPad with him on my chest. And like that opening scene, like it hit me a lot harder of like just if I had to just take my son right now off my chest and put him in something and like
Yeah.
um it's a much stronger. But I totally agree with certain things. Like you are a brave soul because it feels like if anyone says anything about the Christopher Reeve Superman, they're like, "What? No, you're wrong." Like it's like the
Oh,
most biggest.
I don't have any precious things here in the super fandom. I will I will critique Christopher Reeve Superman all day. I mean there's some good things about him, but I'm not afraid
No,
to
I
call
totally
it like
agree
I
with.
see it.
Like I don't like Margot Kidder as Lois Lane and her and Clark's relationship because she never likes Clark. She's always
Yeah,
mean. Now, if you were building these characters as a series where you have like points and you could go, but like just in it, like he loves Lois, but Lois loves Superman.
right.
And that's it. Like she hates on Clark. Uh, and Christopher Reeve's Clark people talk about, but that wasn't the Clark of the comics. Like they started changing the comics after his to reflect the Clark that he created. And it's kind of interesting because I feel like, part of it's not to stand out. But if you are that bumbling and goofy, like you're gonna stand out. Like people might not think you're Superman at first, but like you're gonna be on people's mind because you're just so awkward.
Yeah, you're
Like
gonna get noticed.
you're the goofiest guy around. People are gonna notice you and remember you. But I also have a grudge in Superman 2. Let's see if I remember because I've watched both cuts recently and I'm trying to remember. But he spins the world back, right? And then he goes back to the diner and like beats up the guy. Or does he beat
Does
up
he
the guy, then spin the world back? That's what I'm trying to remember.
I'm trying to
Um,
remember, does he spin it back in Superman 2 or is that the end of
yeah,
Superman the
it's
movie?
in both. It's in both because the problem was that the spinning the Earth back was originally the ending for number two because it was
Oh,
one
okay.
massive script. But
Yeah.
when they were filming them back to back, they said, "Hey, give us um, finish Superman one." So they kind of tacked on the ending. That's why if you watch the Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, the film picks up, it starts in a weird spot because it's trying to show you what the original ending for Superman 1 was going to be. The missiles, him stopping them, throwing them into space, and then Superman 1 was originally supposed to end with Zod yelling free as they flew to Earth. That was supposed to be the ending. But
Yeah.
that's why that movie starts weird. The official beginning of Superman 2, like 2 in the Richard Donner cut, is when the credits start. that's when two actually starts. The first part's him saying, "Hey, this is how one should have ended." Um, but I'm trying to remember now if it's he beats up the guy, then spins the earth, or if he spins the earth, then goes back and does
Yeah,
the I must be
I
working
can't
out thing.
yeah, I can't remember the order of the because I had even forgotten about the spinning the world back in Superman 2, but I know he definitely goes back with the guy at the diner after he gets his powers back. That's all I
Yeah.
know,
So while
which
we talk,
seems
I'm gonna
kind of
look that up.
unfair.
I think it'd just been better if he just did like the "come here, sir," and like this guy punches him and then like breaks his hand, because he's Superman. Like that's, but
He
this orders
does
to go.
throw him through an arcade, like a pinball machine. That
Yeah.
seems aggressive. Yeah, it's been a
So
while since I've watched the
I'm trying
Donner
to
cut.
remember.
I should revisit it.
I'm trying to remember the end of Superman 2 because, like I said, I've watched both versions so much that they might just be bleeding in my brain. They
Yeah,
might have just done this.
those
Yeah, I think it's he gives Lois the memory kiss, then goes back to the diner and messes with the dude, and then it ends. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, don't ever do a marathon where you watch both at the same time or both back to
it's
back
hard to
because then
keep up with them. Yeah.
it's great when it's fresh, but then later you're like, but we're gonna keep moving on. But um, favorite Superman based TV show.
Oh, I would probably say Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman, but Justice League Universe. I don't know if that would be considered a Superman based show, but
It
I love
works.
JLU.
TV, it works.
But
It's fine for me.
I would say Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman.
Works for me. It's a great show.
Uh, we,
I
do
love
you want me
season
to
one.
explain it, or is this
Oh,
one
you
of the
go
fast
ahead.
questions?
No, no, go ahead.
Well, I really like the way that they utilized a different approach. It wasn't just like a Superman show. It was a romance. It was the show was based on
Rom
the
com.
romance of Lois. Yeah, it was a rom com of Lois and Clark, and it was originally supposed to be a Lois Lane show. It was supposed to be called, from what I know, it was originally supposed to be Lois Lane's Daily Planet, and
Hmm.
for some reason they didn't want to go with that, so I guess they had to have Superman in there. But I love Terry Hatcher's Lois Lane. Dean Cain probably is my favorite Clark Kent. And I just love that show. It some of it's a little ridiculous, I'll admit that, but but I think it's just a really enjoyable show. It's kind of comfort food to me when I watch it. If I just want to feel snugly inside, I'll watch Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman, just because
No, I agree.
it's a little comforting.
It is, and my wife and I like did a rewatch 3 years ago. We moved into our house and we hadn't had the internet up or everything was still unpacking, and I just had my DVD set. We just put it in to start like, watching and going through it, and I was like, it is just comforting. Like, it's just a different way they made TV. I mean, Dean Cain's Superman is the first post-crisis Superman.
Yeah, it's true.
John Shea's Lex Luthor is the first post-crisis Lex Luthor. Um, and I learned some things about Lois and Clark from my friend Sam Rizzo. You know Sam. Um, I
I
heard
think I know the name, but I haven't really
he was in our
interacted.
chat.
Yeah.
He popped in and said, "Hey," he was talking about how one of the things that led to Lois and Clark being birthed was because it had to do with the rights with Superman character and everything, and how Superboy had kept getting popular, but DC Warner had like no real cut of the profits. It was a Viacom Paramount Salkind thing, and
Oh,
so
yeah,
what they
that
did
seems right.
was they used some sort of like they weren't approving scripts. They used some legal loophole type stuff that got that show shut down, and then that's why there's this small gap from when that ended to when
And then the
Lois and Clark
Superboy.
premieres
Oh,
is because Superboy ended, and then like within a year, two, or I have to look at my dates for sure, but like Lois and Clark's on the air, and that was
yeah.
more DC produced. They were getting Warner Brothers getting their cut of a Superman based show, and that's what helped birth, uh, the whole Lois and Clark thing. And you know, it's funny because to me, I had Christopher Reeve Superman, but Dean Cain was more of my childhood Superman because it was harder to find home media of the Chris films. I
Oh,
had
interesting.
I think I had a TV dubbed, VHS of the first two together because I always forgot, like when I was younger, what happened in what. I thought it was all one movie because I remember, oh, the Kryptonians at the beginning and then this, but then when I got older and I watched it, I could, oh, it's two different films. And it always seemed like Superman 4 was on TV constantly. It had to be like super cheap to broadcast. Because I feel like every time I was at my grandparents' house, it was on like the local TV station or whatever. So I had that, but like the Superman, like I tuned in to watch, like was the Dean Cain Superman because it was on Sunday nights. And that's just what you did. You watched.
Yeah.
So that was a big, and then of course the animated series came along and everything. All right. So you've kind of already said this, but we're going to tweak it a little bit. Favorite version of Clark Kent?
Uh, I mean, probably the Dean Cain, from Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman. I like Tom Welling as Clark Kent. I think, especially in those early seasons, I think he did a really good job of showing the awkwardness and the teenage side of Clark, where he would have frustrations about being able to do certain things with his powers and being able to fit in. I thought he did all of that really well. I had problems with him as he grew older, uh, but I thought in those like first 5 seasons, I think Tom Welling did a really good job with Clark Kent, and that's really he signed on to be Clark Kent. So I like his Clark Kent, but I think Dean Cain for me is um his Clark was just so likable, and
Hmm.
I found that he what I liked about him was that he did a lot of investigating with Lois, and he was Superman sometimes, but he, I think, helped the people of Metropolis more as Clark than he did as
Hmm.
Superman, just by way of journalism and being a good reporter and looking out for the little people. That's what I love about Lois and Clark, just the show in general, is that the characters cared about people. And so I think for me, I'd probably say Dean Cain.
I I can agree with that. This isn't me talking, but I'm pretty close to Dean Cain. I have an argument for Tyler based on just a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
what
no, he's a good
what
Clark. Yeah.
I like because I really liked his Clark. I mean, so 2016, you have BVS coming out. I think it had just come out, and then we had that trailer for Supergirl season 2, and I remember literally watching the trailer, and it has the shirt rip scene of him of and I just of Tyler just running and doing the shirt rip, and I just remember like having chills, and I'm like, wow. And then like his first on appearance where he's like talking to Mr. White, and he's like, "Gee Willikers, yes, yes, lickety split." He's like, "I know that no one says lickety split anymore, sir." And he's like, and then when he walks in, and just it got me, and I was like, wow. And then he's just been able to evolve that, and I think he's got the Clark and the Superman down, and he continues to. But I really like what he does with Clark, and I like Tom Welling's Clark, but Smallville's weird because Superman Returns kind of jacked it all up.
A little
Because
bit, yeah.
if you look at Smallville, especially in a retrospective, they were doing their own thing, had their own mythology, but then all of a sudden, right as Superman Returns starts to come out, they inject so much of the classic Donnerverse Superman stuff into there and start to change it up and go some that way and try to make like they start introducing more higher level Superman concepts and villains. Because if you look at Smallville, you have the high school years, the first 4 years. That's your first volume, your first major chapter. Then you have the college, as my friend Zach calls it, the college dropout years.
Yeah, because
Five,
he didn't
six,
really go to
seven,
college.
and then you have the Metropolis years, which are 8, 9, and 10. Which 8, 9,
Hmm.
and 10 is really when it's more of just a Superman show, but they don't want to be Superman as much because he's in Metropolis, he's the Blur, and I am. The more I think about it, the more I get, you know, Clark and Superman are one person. There's not these
Hmm.
three distinctive things. I hate when people try to say, "Oh, there's Clark, there's Kal El, there's Superman." No, Kal El is just the name that his Kryptonian heritage had, but
Right.
he is who he is. He's a person, And it's like if you look at this as a person, when he's Superman, he's a little bit more this way. He projects himself a little bit more. He's still himself. Just like, when you go to work, you're still you, but sometimes you have to put on a little bit of a show, you know.
Yeah.
And then when you come home, you're still you, but maybe in a bad mood, you're a little bit more of a grump. You're a little bit more in a pain, but you're still
Yeah.
you. And it's like if this is him, Superman's over here, and then maybe when he's Clark, he's a little bit more like this when he's got the glasses because he's just enough of the gauge to kind of be a little different. But also, I mean, in most of the times, Superman doesn't always interact with the same people that Clark Kent interacts with, except for like Lois Lane, who now knows who he is, so he doesn't have to,
Right.
maybe Jimmy Olsen. But I'm not really into the whole he's like these different. No, that's not him. That's Batman. Okay, that's
Yeah.
Batman's. That's Batman's shtick. Clark is just who he is. He's a person. He just has a different name. Like I'm Tyler, but Tyler's my middle name. But when I go out and I have to do something professional or serious, they're like, "Oh, Jonathan," because that's my first name. I'm still the same person, but you're just calling me a different name.
Yeah.
So my kids call me dad. I'm the same person, just I have a different label.
Right, right,
Uh,
right.
all right, so we'll change this question up. If you could have one Superman slash Supergirl slash Kryptonian power, just one of them, what would it be?
Oh. Um, hmm. That's tough because I mean, flight's obviously always the obvious answer just because you could go different places. But I also have a little bit of a fear of heights. Not completely debilitating, but I do have a fear. So I don't know. I'm kind of like Clark Kent from Smallville in those early years. He had a little bit of a fear of heights, and that's why he didn't fly or jump very much. I don't know. I really like heat vision, but I don't know that I would use it for much. I think
Much properly.
it's a really cool power, but I would be afraid of the consequences of heat vision. I would probably burn parts of my body off cuz that would just that or I would burn a house down or something. Um I
There's so many
guess
times I wish I could just like use heat vision on somebody or something like. I'd be in
yeah,
trouble.
heat vision is so dangerous. I guess invincibility maybe. I don't know if invincibility also like would prevent things like cancer or like super healing or something like that. But I like the idea of invincibility because then you wouldn't have to worry so much about like some I work at a university, and so sometimes I'm worried that the college students who don't really know how to drive are going to hit me while I'm crossing the street.
Yeah.
It would be kind of nice to be able to go about your day and not worry if you're going to get shot or hit by a car or something like that. Even if crashed in an airplane, god forbid, you could hit the ground
Walk
and you'd be
away.
fine. So I guess I would probably say invincibility because that's probably a more of a practical thing for me.
See, mine comes down to I feel like flight would be almost worthless without the invincibility because of like
Oh,
the
true.
friction. You know what I'm saying? Unless you have like some sort of
Yeah.
special thing. Like, I mean, the Flash has the Speed Force, so it's supposed to be like the energy protects him and all that stuff
Right.
for the friction. So I'm like, if I didn't have the invincibility, like it'd be like, I'd be
Yeah.
on
It kind of goes
fire.
together.
Um, but I think the strength would be a big one. But then I feel like I'd screw something up. So like the invincibility, I think is where I kind of lean towards too, because of like you said, just the daily stuff can come in handy. I wouldn't be as afraid of anything. Like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
All
Although
right.
Superman also does have a power that not a lot of people talk about, super ventriloquism, which would be kind of fun to play with. You
Or
could
the
like
shooting
throw.
out many versions of yourself from your hand, like.
Yes, yes, that could come in handy. So I think some of those wackier powers might be worth considering too.
That'd be kind of cool. Like, what are you doing, Tyler? Watch, I'll help you clean the house. um, okay, so favorite Superman storyline or
Ooh, are we
Supergirl? They kind of
talking?
go hand in hand.
Is
So
this comics, TV shows,
either.
all of
If you
it?
have one on one, I mean, if you have a comic you want to talk about, if you have a TV show, like
Oh gosh. Well,
Yep.
the death of I mean, I hate to sound like something that everybody probably always says, but the death of Superman comic storyline was the thing that really made me love comics. Uh, because there is a part in, I don't know if it's the death of Superman or the return of Superman, but there's a moment where Lex Luthor goes down into the area where the Superman coffin is, like the burial site, and he's frustrated that he was not the one who killed Superman, and he
Yep.
slams his fist down on the coffin, and the panel cuts to someone trying to resuscitate Jonathan Kent because he's had a heart attack. And that was I loved that panel so much because it sort of opened my mind to what comics could be. It wasn't just comics are just pretty pictures that sort of illustrate what's happening. It's like, no, they're like cinematic storyboards. They're telling you the action in, and I could kind of, I'm a very visual person, and I'm also
Hmm.
a video editor by trade. So to see it in that way, that was the first time I had read a comic where it was presented in such a way that I could see it playing out like it was a film, and I loved that. So that storyline also made me appreciate Lois Lane kind of for the first time in my life, because she was smart, and she was not someone, that was kind of fooled by a lot of things. She was trying to figure out who the real Superman was, and I really liked that. So I guess that's the one storyline that really sticks out to me is like having an impact on my life. And not in a real profound way, but like in my life of reading comics, I guess, and kind of my fandom, because it showed me that comics could be more than just pictures on a page.
Awesome. I think the death storyline. I joke often how I'm like, it seems like the only important story with Superman is like the death. That's what like the biggest everyone wants to jump to. But it also goes to show you that how big he is. That when he's gone, the absence of that is just sucks so much. You know, I remember the first time I read the whole death thing. Like I read it in sections, and now I just have like one giant thick. The funeral for for a friend part, like that whole where it's just like people reflecting on him gone, especially the Bibbo stuff. Um,
Yeah.
got me. And Bibbo is a character I hope that might appear like in Superman and Lois, like a flashback. They're in Metropolis, or they go back to Metropolis for something like that. Would be kind of cool. Um,
Yeah, that would be awesome. And I guess if I could mention a Supergirl story, my
Please.
favorite Supergirl comic story is Bizarro Girl by Sterling Gates. He kind of had
Mm,
a run there, and his Bizarro Girl story is one of my favorites because it shows Supergirl connecting to Bizarro Girl on a personal level, and not seeing Bizarro Girl as a strange a strange creature. She sees her as someone who is like her, who needs help, and she takes her back to Bizarro World, and it's such a great story that showcases Supergirl's compassion. And so that one I uphold as one of the great all-time Supergirl stories. But then I would also probably point you to Peter David's Supergirl run, which is a wacky, crazy version of Supergirl. It's the Linda Danvers Matrix Supergirl, where it's basically Linda Danvers mixed together with it's the Matrix protoplasm, and
yep.
then it's combined with Linda Danvers, who is actually in the story like a satanic cult member, which is kind of wild.
Yep.
But I love that story because it actually, if you read it all in one thing, it does a pretty good job. Sometimes comics sometimes don't do a good job of like connecting everything, and so you read it and you're like, "Ugh, did I miss an issue? I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what to do." But the Peter David run actually is a really good. It's a long story, but it does a good job of connecting all the storylines and the characters, and it has a really wonderful art, and the story is very mature in the way it's told, in terms of like the sophistication of the storytelling. So I would probably say Sterling Gates's Bizarro Girl and Peter David's Supergirl run.
Well, that's awesome because that kind of takes my next question. So we'll just chuck that out because you pretty much answered it. But like the different storylines, that Supergirl, because I mean, she's had a very convoluted history of because of post crisis and everything, and the pre crisis. She's Kara Zor-El, the cousin, and then she's like you said, the Matrix protoplasm thing, and that is interesting because I remember the first time I read a comic with that, and I was like, "What is this?" Because I like
Yeah.
it was just a random. It was like right when she was dying or something. I just remember like it had Superman on the cover, but he was like in black and purple, and it was like the I've been trying to find that issue forever. It was Action Comics, I believe. I should probably
Okay.
look it up on DC Universe. I'm an idiot. Um, and like she took the form, like she's on the Kent farm, and like the form. If I find it, I'll send you the number, like
Yeah,
what it
yeah,
is.
send
And I just remember reading like, "What is this?" Um, it
Yeah,
was interesting.
Supergirl actually has a long history, and I think it's an underrated comic book history. She, comes in the Silver Age, and a lot of those stories are kind of the same thing. You have like three scenarios, and then the story's over. But it gets a little more sophisticated as time goes on, and when you get into the 70s and 80s era, they let Supergirl grow up a little more, which is cool. She goes to college and gets a job. She's a camera operator at a local TV station, so I can identify with her that way because I was I worked in local TV news, so it was kind of fun to see that Supergirl did that as well. So I really like the era of the 70s and 80s for Supergirl. So it's good stuff.
Sorry, I'm picking on my wife because she made me some tea because she's awesome, but she put it in a Darth Vader
Nice.
mug, and I'm like, "How you gonna put this in
Oh,
my Darth Vader mug when I'm recording a Superman podcast?"
needs to be themed.
I love you. Oh, this tea is great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Um, she got this new tea she wanted me to try, so I'm just
Nice.
picking on her. Um,
Tea is good for you.
it is. So I agree because my okay. So my big thing was Supergirl and Superman that's never been explored. I don't want to like toot my own horn here, but I actually was working on writing a story because I feel like they've never touched on the story of the brothers L. Like
Oh
you have
yeah.
Jor-El and you have Zor-El, but they never talk about them. Like what's their relationship? What's their history? I think there's a really strong story there, and so not to like get back into my, but I have a story that I've worked on, and I'm not going to give too much away because I wrote it because okay, like I said to you, my first name is Jonathan, and I'm the oldest brother. I have dark hair. My wife has dark hair. My brother is younger. His name is Zach, so it starts with a Z. We have a J. He's the younger. He had his kids first, and his wife he is blonde. His wife is blonde. His children are blonde. You cannot like not see some parallels going on here.
It's
And so
very
I
similar.
started so I started writing this story, and like I won't get all the details, but I like the idea that something happens with these brothers, and they used to be close, and they've basically become adversaries. And at the end, when the planet's destroyed, the only hope that they have for their family and a way for them to carry on is, you know, Jarrell sends Clark, or I'm sorry, Cal. Gotta get my terms right. And Zor-El's like, it should have been my responsibility to make amends with my brother, but now like it falls to you. Watch over your cousin, heal our family, and he sends Kara,
Yeah.
to take care of her baby cousin. Like the idea that we failed, I failed, my brother failed. If we were united as a family, maybe we could have helped our planet, but fix our family. So it's there's a lot to it
That's a
that
good
I've worked
story.
on. There's
Yeah.
there's a lot to it that I've worked on because I use the parallel started with just mine and my brother's relationship and where we are now compared to how we used to be. But I
Yeah.
just feel like not like I have to write, but I feel like there's a story there of these two men who have children who both survived this devastation. What's their story? So
Yeah,
um,
DC Comics actually has some really cool old Krypton stories that I've been trying to read through, like the Worlds of Krypton and things like that.
those are
I think
interesting.
there's even some Phantom Zone stories. So I've been trying to read through some of those old Kryptonian stories because they do open up the world a little bit.
I I had to write my own backstory for Krypton, just because that's like me as a writer. I told my wife, I said, um, my problem is always they talk about Krypton. I'm like, what if Krypton had a massive civil war?
Mm.
and that got to the point where they used biological weapons and everything, and they like it damaged their planet, but all that remained was like 3 cities worth of people. So there's only like a couple million people left on this entire planet, and that's kind of why you can start to get to the point where even though there's people, like, you might have these families that everybody knows because the planet is not that big,
Yeah.
because they wiped out most of their civilization already. And I wrote a whole history kind of thing, and I filtered that into my story because, of course, you got to write some backstory to write your story. Now I'm
Cool.
just talking to myself.
No, that
But
sounds awesome.
favorite super film. So animated, live action, Superman or Supergirl. Go.
Can it be Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice if there's
Yes, it can.
Batman in it? Okay,
Yes, it
so
can.
that would
It's got
probably
Superman in it.
yeah, so that would be, and I would argue that maybe it's more of a Superman film, but you could argue it both ways. That one's like my favorite. Uh, it's my favorite version of Superman and my favorite story that they were telling. And I think it's just a phenomenal film. I always call it a cinematic masterpiece, and people are always like, What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Yes, it is." So I people push back on that with me, but I think it's one of
People
the
suck.
best films ever made. But I like that film for Superman because he struggles a little bit with trying to figure out his place as Superman with the people, and by the end of that film the people have embraced him and see him as the symbol of hope that that Superman is in everyone's, I guess, the zeitgeist of people in the real world. We always think that Superman is supposed to be this beacon of hope, and I think by the end of that film Henry Cavill's Superman does get there, even if it's in his death. But I love that ending where there's a vigil
Hmm.
at Heroes Park, and it says, "If you seek his monument, look around you." And I love the idea of that because, and that's a real thing too. It's from oh, what is, I used to know that by heart, but it's a real thing. I think in St. Paul's Cathedral, if you seek his monument, and it'll come to my mind at some point. But if you seek his monument, look around you is an actual thing that's inscribed in that cathedral. So that's where they got it. But I like the idea of that for Superman because the idea that people in Metropolis etched that themselves. Like, it wasn't something
Hmm.
that was, built into that shrine. It was someone wrote it on there. And I like the idea that the people of Metropolis, think to themselves, well, he's not here anymore. But if you want Superman to be here, you can be Superman to each other. We can
Hmm.
be Superman for each other. And I just think about that a lot in the real world. Like, if I want to see the values of Superman or Supergirl in the real world, I've got to embody those myself and be Supergirl to someone else that I encounter. And so I like the message of that with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice because it's, to me, it's quite inspiring. A lot of people say that that film is dark and gritty and gloomy, and I'm like, that's the most inspiring film I've ever seen in my life. So I think that just based around the idea of what Superman becomes at the end of that film, I think makes it my favorite super film.
I always have the point that, like, if I was to do a Superman film, I think you have to kind of show the world a little darker, but you got to make Superman the light. Because, like, in
Mm.
the first film, like, you got to make him like his inspiration is what elevates other people. It's what changes things. Um, the whole idea is that he brings the hope, and it's like, how does that affect and ripple and everything? And I think that's kind of part of the what they were going for, is like showing like what the world was and then what Superman can make it. All right, do you have a
And I think
favorite
I was
artist? Oh no, go ahead,
uh
expand.
I was just gonna say that Man of Steel does that pretty well too, with the scene with Perry holding Jenny's hand when they think they're all gonna die, and
Yep.
that's kind of interspersed with Superman fighting the World Engine. So I think that's really wonderful to show that these human beings were having to be Superman for each other in that moment because they thought that was it, and so just a simple handhold of somebody who's scared. That's a Superman thing to do. So I think that film does a really good job. of displaying that.
I was bummed that Lombard wasn't in BVS. Just throwing that out there. Like it kind of bummed me out that
Yeah, it was good
where
to
did
see
he
him
go?
in live action though, so
Yeah,
at least we got him
I
in
was like,
something.
and then there's like one part in Man of Steel that bothers me, and it's like some of the smallest parts. You know what it is? Is when he's fighting on the street and Zod kicks the truck, and he like jumps and like glides
Yeah.
between it. It looks awesome, but that truck just goes behind him and blows up, and then the building just starts to collapse. And
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like,
He maybe
you
could
could have
have stopped
you
it
could have
or
stopped that
carried it
truck, man.
away.
Like I
Yeah,
understood it
no.
looked awesome, but you could have stopped that truck.
No,
I
I
just had to
agree.
pick
I
on him.
agree. It's
So
his like first day as Superman.
like he's
He's
like,
figuring it
look,
out.
man, I'm getting beat up like by of someone I thought could be family. Okay, chill out, dude.
Yeah,
Do
so
you have a
Superman artist
yeah?
or favorite Supergirl artist?
Yep,
Oh gosh. I'm more familiar with the Supergirl ones just cuz I read more
sure.
Supergirl art. So I like Carnero, I forget what her first name is. Carnero Lupacina, Emanuela Lupacina, I think is her name. But they do a really good job like drawing Supergirl's hair, which I think is really important. I think also Bilky Everly, I think Bilquis or Bilky. I need to remember how to pronounce her name. But
I'm horrible with names.
she's drawing the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, the Tom
Mm,
King run currently, and
yeah,
that art is just like it's beautiful. You could frame that and put it up on your wall, and people would think it was like some, fancy pants artist from some fancy pants gallery. It's just so beautiful. Every panel in those books is gorgeous, and the coloring is really good too. So I think probably those three Supergirl artists would probably. I wish I had their full names. Their names are escaping my brain, I want to say Carnero has a C name with her first name, but Carmen, I think Carmen Carnero and Emanuela Lupacino and Bilquis Evely would probably be my top three.
nice. Now, what is your favorite Supergirl costume, like in the comics?
Oh, that's tough because she
Because
does go through a lot of iterations.
I would just throw this out there. I absolutely hate the one where it was in like the early 2000s, where it's like almost looks like a crop top with like the really short skirt that's really flowy. I hate that. Just saying that. Just
It was that the white top with the blue skirt?
that one's
The one
on my okayish. It's if I could find one, it's like I think it's the same one that she had in the apocalypse when they did. I can't remember what the hold on. I'll
I
find
think
it.
I kind of know what you're talking. Oh, I yeah, no, that might have been the David Turner version maybe. Yeah, I would agree with that. Anything that showed her midriff, I was not a very fond of. And I definitely did
This is
not
a
like the new.
nicer version, but
Oh,
you
yes,
can see
yes,
it.
yes, yes, yes. I think that's the Turner version. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. Not a big fan of the new 52.
The
I
new
like
52
some
one
of
was
the
just
way.
kind of weird.
Yeah,
It's just
I really don't like the way it draws attention to her bottom area. Not
yep.
real crazy about that. Definitely I can definitely tell you that a woman did not create that costume design. Um I
I
don't know.
totally agree with you.
Yeah, I like the
I
rebirth
totally agree.
stuff because they were trying to kind of pull the rebirth look into the Supergirl TV series on the CW. I thought they did a good job of trying to adapt that. Let's see. The Silver Age is really interesting because a lot of times she actually has like a full blue suit, like the blue top with the blue skirt.
That's my favorite.
Which
That's my the superhero girls,
Oh
the
yeah,
original superhero.
that's a good version. I like her
Because
shoes in that.
my daughter loves that, and that's the costumes that she has.
Yeah, I mean, she's had a lot of costumes. She's had like the short shorts with the blue shirt with the S shield like on one side of her chest. She's had let's see, I'm trying to think of the different iterations and the different versions. I'm not crazy about the Linda Danvers look. So probably either the Silver Age or the Rebirth era would probably be my favorite.
I can really agree with you on those. Like I know it's comics, but at the same time, you don't have to like draw her like over sexualized. But we
Yeah,
won't
that
go.
happened a
We
lot in the early 2000s.
um like like this artwork right here we're talking about is like breathtakingly awesome.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
So let me ask you, as the TV version, skirt or the pants? Which costume do you like better?
I prefer just visually the skirt because it's more of a classic Supergirl look. But I understand the arguments for the pants, especially just logistically for the show, which shoots in Vancouver, Canada. It gets very cold, so Melissa actually herself, Melissa Benoist, asked for pants just so she wouldn't be cold anymore. And also the pants kind of, if it was a real thing, you wouldn't want Supergirl flying up in the air and everyone seeing up her skirt. So I get the arguments for the pants. I've gotten used to the pants over the years, but just like visually, for me, I think the skirt is more of a Supergirl look, and not just because it's a skirt, just because of the history of Supergirl and
Yeah,
kind of what separates her, makes her look a little different from Superman. Because nowadays, with the pants, especially on the show, she's basically just Superman with long blonde hair, and so I personally like it when she looks a little different from him.
I like that on the show they gave her the higher boots and then the tights under the boots. I thought that was great choices for costuming. And I always thought if you did like a film, like it'd be kind of neat to start out with like her like in the same kind of pants costume as Superman, but then she tears it or whatever and makes a skirt because she makes it look more earth style.
Oh, so you would have
Would
her
be
go
like,
the opposite way of the TV show.
yeah,
Interesting.
just to do it like something where, because I mean, if you look at like Man of Steel, how they all had kind of that under
Yeah.
suit, even Feora had it. We saw and everything. So the idea that Kara would have the same, and then like she decides that she's going to change it up and make it a little bit more Earth-like, I think would be kind of cool. Um,
Yeah, I think
it
especially for that universe, that would make sense.
it would be fun just to play with, but because I get what you're saying and like, I understand the points with the pants as well. So it's it's one of those things because when the show was coming out, my friend and I had the argument of like, are they gonna tie it to Superman? Like, is he gonna be mentioned, or are they just gonna do a Supergirl show where there's she is kind of the Superman, like there has never been Superman or whatever. Um, so it's kind of always that balancing act of, because I think her story has a lot more resonance with the fact that she was older, she has the Kryptonian heritage, the history she remembers. There's a lot more like, I thought the New 52 did a cool job when they were doing like the idea of her becoming a Red Lantern, because she has this anger and this rage in her for her planet and the everything that she lost. Clark has a sorrow about it, but he's never known it. He's had a good life on Earth.
Yeah,
All right,
that's
so
like one of the big differences.
here's the quick questions without thinking about it too much. Are you ready?
Sure.
Tr- Superman, trunks or no trunks?
No trunks.
All right, see, I like this girl.
I
I
don't I
like
don't
her.
even have to think about it.
What I've come to just my rationale is, if you want to put him on him in the comics, fine. But live action, they made him work with Brandon Routh in Crisis. They also didn't shoot him that much full body.
Yeah.
Um, you know, around other people. But in all reality, I understand the concept. I listened to you guys' argument. I wanted to jump in at the panel. Of course, it was pre-recorded afterwards and everything, so, or post-recorded, whatever. But I understand it, what people are saying. But I understand they break up the suit, but they just don't work anymore. Um,
Yeah, I don't think it I think you have to have a justification for it is all I'm asking.
you do, you do. The Kents, alive or dead in the comics?
Do I prefer them to be alive or
How,
dead?
yep. How would you want them, alive or dead?
Oh, I'm not supposed to think about this real hard.
It's okay.
I think I like it when there's at least one of them alive. So I would probably say alive.
See, I always say that, but then the more I've thought about it, I like the idea that they're both alive. I like
Yeah.
the idea that I think you could make some really cool. Like I've seen memes and stuff, but having just mom and pa almost be the family, the mom and dad to all the Justice League, like that kind of
Yeah.
extension. Um, like there's a great thing where it was like a Mother's Day thing, and it was Martha like hugging Bruce, like kind of come here, um, because I think Superman doesn't have to be birthed from tragedy. The tragedy was not his tragedy that fell on him. He was an infant. That's like the tragedy of his parents. Um, he does what he does because it's the right thing to do. I know there's a great dramatic story with like his father dying and he can't help him or all that. Um, but I think the idea that he has both his parents, like in Lois and Clark, because there's some great stuff with both his parents in there, and the idea that he just does what he does because it's the right thing to do. He doesn't have to have this dark like side that every superhero seems to have. Like that someone has to die. So I like the idea of the Kents being alive.
Yeah, I also would echo your love for the fact that the Kents can sometimes be the family for other Justice League members. They play that up a little bit in Justice League Unlimited. Kara in the DCAU, or Kara really on Superman the animated series is how they refer to her. But she lives with the Kents, and Martian Manhunter has interactions with the Kents, and I do enjoy that they can serve as like a family of parental units for other Justice Leaguers.
One of my favorite episodes is me and the kids watch every year. It's the Comfort and Joy
Yeah,
episode
oh,
of
yeah.
Justice League Unlimited. And when Clark comes home with Martian Manhunter, and Martha's like, "Well, I always knitted a couple of extra," and he puts on a sweater. Even her in the recent Superman Man of Tomorrow animated film, the way they interact with John, like he can, what's the line? I remember, like he can stay, like we'll set up the sheets or whatever.
Yeah,
So I like that vibe from them of being like just their parents, but they'll parent anybody who comes around. So
yeah, yeah.
so now this gets to be a little bit more towards you. So tell me, why Supergirl Radio? What was the spark? What was your catalyst? I mean, my quick story is I was doing a Gotham podcast. Supergirl was announced, Krypton was announced, and I was like, I want to do Supergirl. And then like from there, I was like, you know what? I want to do more than that. I just want to talk about Superman, Supergirl, Krypton. I want to talk about it all. So I just kind of took that, made it into the show. But what was your start? Why did you want to do this and the way you do it and everything?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a long story. I'll try to condense it down. So Once Upon a Time was
It's a
a TV show.
podcast. We can do it as long as we want to.
So Once Upon a Time was airing on ABC. It was a show about fairy tales and Disney things. And
Good
so
show.
I was doing, yeah, for the first couple seasons, I really loved it. So I was doing a podcast about Once Upon a Time with my friends. And around season 3, I kind of fell out of love with it. I didn't like the way the direction the show was going. And during that time, I was also diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I just kind of determined, I don't like the show anymore. I'm going through a really hard thing. I think I'm just going to stop podcasting. So I stopped that show, didn't continue the podcast. We ended the podcast. And so I went through my cancer treatment, did a year of that. And then after that, I came out of that around January, or I guess it was before that. I guess it was like November 2014, I guess. My friend Andy, who I had met, Andy Bibact of the Flash podcast, he had been a guest of mine on my Once Upon a Time podcast, and so I'd gotten to know him that way. And during that time when we talked for that episode of that podcast, we had talked about DC Comics stuff, and so he knew I was a DC fan, and he had been wanting to start another podcast and kind of create a network, which is now the DC TV Podcast Network. And he remembered me and that conversation. And so he approached me one day and he said, hey, I'm thinking about starting a Supergirl podcast. Would you want to be a part of it? And I said, well, I kind of wanted to stop podcasting. But after about a year of not doing a podcast, I had kind of missed it. And so I was like, maybe I can jump back into that, and maybe it'll help me feel a little normal, and it did eventually, because when you're going through cancer treatment, you kind of feel a little weird and kind of feel like your life is not the same, and so it was really that initial like, hey, do you want to do a Supergirl podcast? Help you start it. And I had always loved Supergirl. Like I mentioned, I had grown up watching the Helen Slater movie. I had seen Laura Vandervoort on Smallville. I'd watched Superman the animated series, so I was really familiar with the character of Supergirl, and so that was kind of the initial spark. And then I had kind of tried to find a co-host. We found another lady who would want to do it with me, named Teresa, and she did it for about a year, and then she decided she needed to move on. And so then I found two other co-hosts, my friend Morgan and Carly Lane. And so Morgan had been a guest on the first couple of episodes. We talked about Smallville together because we had watched Smallville and kind of watched it while it was airing. So we had gone back a long time. So anyway, I guess long story short, Carly eventually had to leave as well, but Morgan's been with me since season one, and so we just have a ton of fun together. And we talk about the show, but we also talk about comics, and we talk about the Helen Slater movie. So we talk about all kinds of things. We just love getting together and talking about Supergirl and having a good time. And within the last year and a half, we started doing the live streaming. That's been so great for us because it's been a way that we can engage our listeners in a new way that I think they enjoy, getting
Hmm.
together like that. And so it's been a fun way to talk about the character of Supergirl, because it's not just me reading the comics, even though I like to do that on my own time, but I get to have discussions about it and hear other people's perspectives. And that's been really fun for me, because I think over the course of Supergirl Radio over these last 6 years, and I think the last episode we did was like episode 333. So we've done a lot of episodes so far. And so I think over the course of that time, I started out as kind of like, yeah, I like Supergirl, but now I love Supergirl. The more I dig into it, I did a whole project where I tried to read from the beginning of Action Comics number 252 and try to read from there on up through her history. I'm kind of now in the new 52, getting through that. Um, but I have really found a love for the character of Supergirl that I didn't have before, because of the podcast, because I've been able to learn so much over the last 6 years. So Supergirl Radio is one of those things where I look back at it now and I think, I had a hesitancy before about doing this podcast, but now I can't even remember what my life was like before it. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, what did I do before we did
Yeah,
this? Like, what was I doing? What was my life like? I don't even remember. It's such a big part of my life now. So yeah, we just have such a good time, and Supergirl is now, one of my all time favorite characters.
that's awesome. I like that story. I like how you have your friends, you build it up, and so the next part is, with this show coming to an end, what's the plan? Like, where's Supergirl Radio going to go? Because I hate the thought of like losing it, like like, and hearing you out there doing your Supergirling. So, what's the plan when the show closes out?
Yeah, that's a lot of questions. Is a question that a lot of people had for us, actually,
She's
because
like,
when the
"Shut up,
show—
Tyler."
no, no, it's a great question, because I have a good answer, I think, for you. When it was announced that the show was ending, they announced the end of the show on Supergirl's comic book birthday, which was very distasteful. But people, I think that we got a couple of people, messaging us saying, "Oh, I'm so sad because this means the end of Supergirl Radio," and we were like, why? Why do we have to end it? We don't have to end it. We can keep going. So I think what we're gonna do when it ends is we're gonna try to get as many interviews with the cast and the crew that we can of the show, so that we started sort of documenting some of the show history with some of the actors already. And so I think once the show ends, we'll be able to get more of those people, because then they don't have to, like, be coy about it and be, oh, we
Yeah.
can't tell you these things. Once the
Oh,
show
it was
ends, they can
great.
tell
It was
us.
great working with that person. That person was
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, yeah. After the show's over, they can say whatever they want to. So I think that's what we're going to try to start doing, mostly. I mean, Supergirl's been in the comics since 1959, and so we have a lot of Supergirl content to cover that we haven't been able to get through. So we could potentially podcast for decades about Supergirl. So that's kind of where we are. We're gonna do interviews, probably do some comic book stuff, and then also just some fun stuff. We started doing these Supergirl radio game nights because game nights on the TV series are a big thing. The Super Friends get together and they play games at game night, and so we like to get together with some other podcasters we know and play games
That's awesome.
over Streamyard. So we'll probably do a little bit more of that just because it's a fun way to get together. So it's kind of whatever we want to do. But my policy is always whatever we do for an episode of Supergirl Radio, it has to tie into Supergirl. It has to have some sort of Supergirl connection or something Supergirl centric. Because I used to listen to Kevin Smith's it used to be called Fat Man on Batman,
Thank you. Thank you.
and
I'm
I
just gonna
and I used
I'm gonna high five you right now. Come on. Two right, let's do this. Bam. Because I know where
yeah.
you're going with this. I know where you're going. Keep going. Keep going, sister.
I
Please.
I I used to love his Fat Man on Batman podcast because he would have Batman actors and he would read some of the comics and I just it was great. And then all of a sudden it became like a Marvel Cinematic News hour and he would talk
Yep.
about the Marvel stuff. And I was like, this has nothing to do with Batman. Of course, now it's kind of evolved into this I don't know what he calls it now, but it's not necessarily just Batman in the name anymore. But I never want Supergirl Radio to turn into that. I don't want it to be like, oh, I come to Supergirl Radio, but you're going to be talking about Black Widow. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I want if people come to Supergirl Radio, they're always going to get something about Supergirl. So
See,
no matter what we do, that's what it's going to be.
see, I love that because I too listen. I loved Fat Man on Batman. He talked to artists. He talked to actors. He would sit there and, like you said, he would read the comic, and it was like this almost intimate thing of him and one on one. But then, like, he had Mark
Yeah,
Bernardin on, and it was cool. They would do something, and then they started. He's like, "Yeah, we're just going to do the utility belt." They were kind of talking about DC, and then they're like comics, and then the next thing you know, like it's Fat Man Beyond, where he's talking
yeah,
about whatever with Mark Bernardin, and then it like became basically the podcast is the audio version of like them doing a TV show like on YouTube because they'll be like, do a two shot, a one shot, back to you. And then I'm like, I don't even care anymore, man. Like
yeah.
I missed the goofy theme song you had. Um where was you talking about punching turkeys in the face?
Oh yeah, I
And
remember that. That's old school.
and I because in that show I was listening to hardcore, my wife and I actually went to the secret stash and we're actually on an episode of Comic Book Men, but our
That's
segment
awesome.
never aired. Like I have pictures, we were there and everything, like, but it got cut and everything, it never
Yeah,
aired. But um, and then it was just like after, like I just kept listening, and then all of a sudden it was like it was about whatever, and I was like, man, that's not why I'm tuning in. Like, it was cool when he was directing, like, and he would have like the actors and stuff from when he directed The Flash. Like, I mean, if you keep it in the DC sandbox, I'm fine with. Like, it all
yeah,
connects. Um, and that's kind of my thing. Like, even with Krypton Report, like next year we're gonna do a couple more Batman themed episodes, building up for the Batman. We're gonna look back at some stuff, and we did some reviews of the Joker, the different Jokers leading up to the Joker back in 2019 and everything. But we're keeping it in the DC sandbox. But if I want to talk about Marvel, I'll go start a Marvel podcast, especially when I'm
yeah,
Kevin Smith and I own my own podcasting network.
yeah.
So I'm just gonna throw that out there. But,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we'll probably on Supergirl Radio, we'll probably talk about the Flash movie because Sasha Kaje's Supergirl is going to be appearing in that. So, yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I think as long as you have some connective tissue there, I think it's fine.
yeah, I can't really wait till that comes out and just hear your perspective. And I mean, I can't wait to listen to you guys talk about the comics and just like what your perspective is on different comics and how her character is, portrayed. Like your take on Christopher Reeve's Superman in that world, is something that a lot of people don't think about or look at. And the fact that you have this different perspective, and then you apply that to how Supergirl the character was treated and stuff in the comics at different times, and your knowledge of the various forms of Supergirl in those comics it's great because it just makes it that much more enjoyable for listeners who don't have as much knowledge or want to have more knowledge. And also, I mean, just to have a different perspective. We we listening to your panel, like you can tell that people who love Superman, even though it's the same character and we have different versions, they have different perspectives of that character, what they like about that character, and whatever. So here's a hard one
Yeah.
for you, or maybe it's not a
Okay.
hard one. Favorite live action Supergirl?
I mean, it's gonna be Melissa Benoist, but they've all been so good. So we have Melissa Benoist, we have Helen Slater, we have Laura Vandervoort, and Sasha Kaje is the fourth one who we haven't really seen
Let's
much
say she's
of
on
yet.
Batter Up, like, but she's got
Yeah.
that where she might not be playing Kara thing, like it's kind of they haven't officially said. So it's one of those like then it becomes like okay, you're a little different. You're a Supergirl, not because when you hear Supergirl, it's just like in the comics, like there's Batman Bruce Wayne, but then there was also Batman Dick Grayson for a while.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's kind of like that. Like she's Supergirl, but she's not Kara Zor-El.
Yeah,
So
we're not exactly sure where they're taking her or what interpretation they're going with her as of right now. But Melissa, I think for me is just she's such a perfect portrayal. She hasn't always gotten the best material because the quality of the show has deteriorated over the last like 3 seasons. But the way she carries herself, her Cara Danvers is really good. Her Supergirl is also really good, and she has the ability to grab me emotionally. I mean, I love Supergirl, but I don't love Kara on that show just because I love Supergirl. I love Kara and she's my favorite character because Melissa plays her so well. So I think for me, Melissa just she looks the part. She portrays it well, and she's able to make me believe that she is the character she is. Helen Slater, even though she was in maybe not so good movie, maybe a little bit of a goofy movie, she still plays Kara Zor-El really well. Laura Vandervoort is also great for me. Season 7 of Smallville is only good because she's in it. um, so,
yeah,
so
season
I think.
7 storyline is like, oh, we should have done this storyline back in season 5. Oh, we messed up.
Yeah, I think she really her appearances in season 7 especially. She comes around in season 8 and a little bit in season 10, uh but I think for me season 7 is she elevates it. So I don't think we've had a bad live action Supergirl yet. So
No,
I guess
no,
the
we haven't.
pressure is on for Sasha Kaje to live up to that expectation, but I think we've had some good run of Supergirls.
And I agree. Like when you have a television version, I think you're gonna have episodes that the writing wasn't there, or just filler episodes where you're just like, like Dean Kane, Tom Welling. They just had some episodes where they're like, mm.
Yeah.
But you can't look at those. You gotta think about the overarching of everything. And
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we've had 3 really good versions of the character, but Melissa's she's done it the most, and it's resonated deeper. I mean, and she's owned the character, and that's great to see. Well, I'm out of questions. I mean, I could come up
Okay.
with more, but we've been going for a while, and time is precious and all that fun stuff. I could sit here and think of more and more, but that's what we have a second reappearing episodes and
Oh,
stuff for.
sure. I can always come back if you wanna talk more.
Oh, of course. Let some time pass, get your opinion, see. So here's my last question to you: Is just how are you feeling about season 6 of Supergirl right now? Just overarching, not you don't have to break it into it. Just overarching. Like, how do you feel about the season?
If I'm honest with you, and I always try to be honest with people, I'm disappointed. Mostly because I don't feel like it's really leading to something that is big for Kara. I mean, there are some things that are kind of Kara centric, but I think they're having to, wrap everybody's character arcs up. And I think Kara could potentially get lost in the shuffle, but I just don't feel like it's a big celebration of Supergirl.
Right.
It just doesn't feel like it's like this is the end of Supergirl's story. And so
Hmm.
for me, I wish the last season of Supergirl would be more of, embracing and celebrating the character of Kara. But I understand, they had constraints with Melissa Benoist and her maternity leave and things like that, so they had to kind of work around it. But I think final seasons of TV shows should, circle around to the beginning and really get back to what made the show special in the first place. And I think that's getting a little bit uh, lost
I
here in
agree.
season 6.
I really agree with you. I feel like this show, let's see, I feel like this show, especially, so I think it goes this show, The Flash, and maybe Batwoman or Batwoman Flash. You can really see the COVID protocol in the
Mm,
production. Like, I really feel it really strong on this show a lot of just how they shoot it, the way they're doing things. And I totally agree with you where I kind of feel like there's certain characters, even like, I hate saying this because like there's characters I like. Like, I love Supernatural, okay? I love that show. But Cass should have been gone a lot or sooner, and then he could have come back later. But some characters, I know you like them, but when you keep them around, you have to find something for them to do. It just kind of mucks up, and that's how I feel about Dreamer. I think that she should have had her arc for a good 2 seasons and then left. I like Brainy. I like what they've done with him now, but I feel like he should have like cut down. We needed to like we extended the supporting cast. We need to start funneling it back down, um, and make it more Supergirl centric. I mean, you could have, especially after her coming out of the Phantom Zone, you could have, you and I talked about on the show about with Kelly, where she was going and her trajectory on things, and I'm like, you know, Kelly's a character that I like, but I don't need her to be up front. Like, she's great as a supporting character. I want to watch Supergirl for Supergirl. We're out of time now. This is the end. It should all be like tight. I should feel something. I should, like be thinking like, man, this is it. Like, um, and maybe they should have like whittled the episodes down a little bit or something. Just tighten the story.